Hello, 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 and welcome to Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is your sassy host, Mark Long. I want to get started by mentioning the winter storms. I hope you all are staying warm, but most importantly, that you all are staying safe in the weather. It's been hitting the Midwest pretty hard here in Dane County. We are experiencing at least over a foot of snow here, with more expected to come later this afternoon, as well as throughout the week with temperatures dropping down. We know that the weather alerts are going to start coming on tomorrow with freezing temperatures dropping below in the afternoon and the evening, so make sure you're prepared for that. I know that St. Louis has seen quite a bit of snow and we're seeing a lot of interstate collisions, so please be safe when you travel. If you have some work from days, please use those. And thanks for tuning into the podcast. I really hope everyone is being safe and that you are avoiding all the ice or the black ice on the roads and the hundreds of school closing. Make sure that you are checking in on your kids and making sure they have everything they need. I know this is a trickier time of the year, but we all knew winter was coming. And here in the Midwest, this is just another chapter of life for us. So, I want to start talking about some politics here, but let's start diving into the Democrats. So, we know going into 2026 is going to be a huge year in terms of what we need to win back, right? And the underlying issue here is Congress. Democrats need to get Congress back. Democrats need to get Congress back. Democrats need to make sure that we have more power and more control in these settings where policies are being passed. So we know that that pundits are currently saying that the Democrats could flip the House due to the GOP fractures and current resignations like with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We know that some challenges still remain, right? We know the messy primaries are coming. We know that there's deep ideological divides between the GOP and the left and liberals and conservatives. But we also know that there's deep ideological divides within parties themselves. We know that socialist Zoran Mandani just became mayor-elect for New York City, and that should be happening within the next couple of months. Actually, next month it starts the new year, so we should be hearing more about that and what's going to happen with that. We are also going to be hearing more in regards to who is going to be stepping up as a leader in a party. Are they going to be current members of Congress? Will it be a blue wave? I don't know. I know the optimism that a lot of Democrats are speaking of is the confidence that have been gained since the 2025 elections in regards to the mayoral elections and Congress elections around the country and state representatives and that kind of thing. And I think what's happening right now, Democrats are starting to really, really understand the power of voting and the power of raising your voice for things that are right. Most importantly, definitely human rights when it comes to a woman's right to choose, and also gender affirming care for families that need to make those necessary decisions. I think something else to consider right now is the Democrats see a lot on the line here in regards to funding and making sure that those who are low income or on the verge of homelessness have access to services nationwide. Specifically in rural communities, we know that there's a lot happening there. So hopefully we know that the strategy here for Democrats is to just win big and to make sure that we get some more representation within the political discourse nationally. So we'll see how that turns out. All right, now I want to look into tariffs. I want to talk a little bit about tariffs because, tariffs are a bitch, but also they're a bitch because we know that prices have gone up exponentially. Specifically this year we see, for example, things like artificial Christmas trees who are, typically are pricey within themselves, but they've gone up at least 20 to 25% this year. With average trees at select stores like Walmart and Target ranging between 10 to 20% increase due to tariffs. We also see, some electronic toys going up about 50% nationwide. And this has been pretty consistent over the past decade or past couple of decades with toy prices going up just because of manufacturing and out of the country and international costs and that kind of thing. But now we're seeing the overall impact of tariffs, which could add 132 years per shopper this holiday season to basically your spending. So just be prepared to spend a little bit more this year. I know it's one of those things where you look at the prices and you're going to be pissed. You are going to be pissed regardless. So might as well accept the fact that prices are going up. As much as this sucks for those who live below the poverty line or those who are low income, who are barely making it paycheck to paycheck, I would suggest, shopping a little bit simpler this year, maybe doing gift bags and things like that. Some ways that retailers are coping this year, they're stocking up early to avoid higher costs. But a variety of the prices are down if you shop early on. So that's what I would suggest you doing. So if you do want to go Christmas shopping, maybe this week prices are going to be up, but you might catch some deals still while they're kind of last minute. Get those this week. I wouldn't suggest waiting till next week or the following couple of weeks because prices are expected to skyrocket strategically due to consumers due to private entities and corporations wanting to make big bang for their buck this holiday season due to tariffs. So just keep that in mind. Also this holiday season, if you're looking to spend more or spend less, another suggestion for spending less, as we see, is to make sure that you are price comparing. I know this is something that a lot of people talk about that they do already, but this year particularly because of tariffs, is very good to just make sure you can repeat gifts if there's a steal, or just kind of keep your expectations a little bit low. There might be some items that you're looking for that might not be available, so just keep that in your mind, and also shop online. Okay, so I want to dig a little bit deeper. So we know those boat strikes happen, and the controversy here is that the U.S. military struck a suspected drug boat in September that ordered a second strike, killing survivors. So there was no confirmed drugs on these boats, as from what has been noted. But Hegseth's stance, who is Pete Hegseth, we know who that is. I'm not going to go into much details, but he says he didn't witness survivors due to a fog of war, and claims he left before the second strike. So he's trying to distance himself from these strikes because he doesn't want any attention from obviously the commander-in-chief, but most importantly his colleagues and also Americans who are concerned that these strikes were basically murder and they weren't like something in response to war. We know that there is some pushback about how this might be related to a war crime. But the political fallout here is that Congress is investigating this, and critics are accusing him of deflecting responsibility in this issue. And we know this is a huge deal because if there were drugs there, we know that there's a proper way to deal with kind of drug crimes in this country, but most importantly when it comes to international border interference. Completely just striking a boat after there was suspected drug use or suspected drug trafficking is not okay. And I know that we know that what if it was the case where there weren't any drugs on this boat? Now, officials are saying that this is the case, that there was a potential, that there was some kind of crime being committed. However, we know that since the boat was turned away, and that he didn't witness any survivors because of the fog of war, that this was blatant murder on those who were there. So we will see what comes from this. Hopefully we will get to see some accountability somewhere. But, you know, the U.S. government shouldn't just be killing and murdering people for suspected drugs. Like, there should be some kind of concrete, like, yes, this is someone who's trying to smuggle drugs into the U.S. We have this connection to this person, XYZ. We should see all details. There shouldn't be any kind of back and forth and distancing of attacks for those who are innocent. So hopefully this isn't something that they're trying to set up with Venezuela, and hopefully the U.S. doesn't get into any more messy bullshit. Moving on. So Trump threatens SNAP again. You won't believe this. So the Trump administration is threatening to withhold SNAP benefits from Democrat-led states that refuse to share recipient immigration data, which is interesting. I'll talk about that in a minute. So the new rules with SNAP is that work requirements have expanded, raising eligibility hurdles, and that the impact is that 42 million Americans rely on SNAP, and lawsuits are underway to block these cuts. But basically the employment eligibility is going to be a huge hangup for a lot of current Americans on SNAP, which is interesting because Americans on SNAP do work. And I think what they are trying to do is weed out Americans who are not working on SNAP and who have no plans of working. But, you know, SNAP is meant to not necessarily promote you working. It's promoting, you know, making sure that individuals are fed. Let's just be honest and say that directly. So with Trump deciding to withhold SNAP benefits to Democrat-led states, aka blue states, is kind of petty and it's a little like weird. Dare I say it? It's very weird because if you look at the whole perspective of this, in our reading a USA Today article, there was actually reporting from Madison, and in Wisconsin in 2023, around 81 million. Yep, that's right, $81 million was spent to administer food share related programs in Wisconsin, according to the USDA. And federal officials are seeking the names, addresses, and social security numbers of these individuals currently in our current year. So we know that there's been several impacts in terms of the amount of money that has been spent on SNAP benefits. But most importantly, in a November 24th letter to Evers, the USDA official, Patrick Penn, he had a letter to Evers asking Evers to turn over the data or outline why state officials won't do so. Now, this is interesting too because why are we writing to the governor to release information specifically regarding SNAP benefits? And what they're trying to do is to make sure that there isn't any immigration data folded in, which is interesting because there shouldn't be any information from immigrants folded into SNAP benefits here in our state because they're not eligible to receive food share. So it's just kind of messy. I think what the Trump administration is trying to do is flex their power and look all tough and domineering when it comes to benefits and who gets benefits and where the money goes and that kind of thing, when they're playing with people's lives during the holidays. And what an ignorant statement for the president to make. Yep, I can't even say it. The president. Can you believe that's the president of our country? The president of the United States is threatening this for millions of Americans who are already struggling. So we'll see how this unfolds in 2026. I'm a little bit taken back. I know there's a lot of struggle just to get here in the first place. And it seems like the president is just trying to keep up chaos for the sake of keeping up chaos. But, you know, what would an orange turd do when they're bored and when they want to look great for his constituents and for his other billionaire friends? Okay, so we talked a little bit about Trump. We talked about tariffs. Talked about the Democrats. Now let's talk a little bit about immigration and what that looks like. So Trump announced plans to end temporary protected status, TPS, as a lot of you have heard, from Somalis in Minnesota, calling the community fraudulent. What? How is a community of people fraudulent? But we will get into that. He has lashed out at Representative Ilhan Omar and said that he doesn't want Somali immigrants in the United States whatsoever. Federal authorities are preparing immigration crackdowns targeting Somali communities in Minnesota, which we know there is a large Somali community in Minnesota and that they have been protected for years in this state. Now, going into some of the information from what I know, I can give you a little bit more information. Trump added Somali gangs are terrorizing people in the great state and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over. This is the president of the United States speaking like this about a group of people, by the way. So, Minnesota, as we all know, is home to the country's largest Somali community, which is about 79,000 people, counting. A little bit closer to 80K people, if you look at the growing population there. But that is between the Twin Cities and across the state in general. And Minnesota has been a huge safe haven for Somalis who fled there following the African nations, or following their African nation, following their long civil war that they had in Africa or in their country. And this has been welcoming for them as a social program to help combat some of that horrific crime that they all had to endure and the impacts that they as a community had from that experience. Now, target an entire community is crazy. And we know that there are some officials speaking out. We know that there's an official that spoke out earlier this week, which was a senator. We had Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is going to speak her opinion. And she called it another late night threat, to go after people with just one state with legal status. And there's been a pattern with this president of coming after people with legal status and making people who are here legally feel inadequate as a way to flex power, but it's also a way to seem superior. We know that this has been done in the past when during the civil rights movement, and during Jim Crow, where African Americans and Black Americans were basically being told to go back where they came from. Additionally, this has happened to Chinese Americans. We have seen this happen over and over again in this country. Japanese Americans with internment camps. So there's a huge problem that a lot of people, especially wealthy white men with power, have in regards to communities that are just scraping by and living the American dream legally. And it just comes down to show you that it's just evil intentions by the president and that he's just being discriminatory to a group of people. Furthermore, Haitian immigrants are now facing a huge chance of basically deportation. So in February of 2026, the Department of, DHS has announced that for TPS for Haitians that will end on February 3rd of 2026, affecting 353,000 Haitian people. Let's say that again. 353,000 Haitian people in this country will be impacted by this. So Haitians will face deportation unless they have other legal status. Meaning, if there's any other way for a Haitian immigrant to have received their green card, to go through the process of becoming a legal citizen in that way, they might be considered. But most likely, in regards to how this might work with this administration, that's not going to be like a case. I don't think there's going to be any leeway here. I think they're looking at if you're Haitian and if you have a Haitian background and if you come from a Haitian community and if your parents are Haitian and that kind of thing. They're trying to eradicate the entire population. So community leaders are warning, basically, people returning to Haiti is very dangerous, given the rising gang violence, the instability, the economy, the natural disasters that have occurred in that country over the past year, the past couple years, but definitely this past year and last year, there were some tragic incidences that have caused the country to be set back. And it just comes to show you that this president does not think about other people, especially Americans. We know that a lot of people who are Haitian were on a program with the Biden administration and previous administrations of coming here legally. And during Trump's campaign for president, he made a comment about Haitians eating cats and dogs. And, that was a generalization and a completely racist trope to his base that he had no problem echoing from a comedian, I guess. I don't know. He's just ridiculous. But most importantly, 2026 is going to be jam-packed with a lot of scared families across the United States. There's going to be a lot of people worried about being deported. There's going to be a lot of people worried about still how to make ends meet in terms of feeding their families with tariffs going into effect, obviously, but the holiday prices going up and people wanting to save. I'm thinking this year you might just have to get smart when it comes to spending, but you also have to get smart when it comes to spreading information and misinformation and making sure those who do have a background, especially if you live in states like Minnesota and you have connection with those who are part of the Somali population, make sure you're reaching out to them, offering support. Same thing if you are around a large Haitian population. I know there was one in Ohio, and then there's a huge Haitian population in places like Dade County, in Miami, in Florida. So my heart goes out to all those families. Please enjoy the holiday season. I know it's going to be difficult for a lot of people this year, but just keep your head up. We're all in this together, and I think if we just stay the course, we vote, we show up, and make our voices heard so that we can protect marginalized communities in this country, we will go so far. Hello, and welcome back to Clock the Tea with Dr. Long. This is time for us to go ahead and get into some reality TV, and I'm bringing it to you. So let's go ahead and get some tea clock. We have quite a few things coming up in the pipeline here. So let's go ahead and talk about the first thing that's happening, which is the Worst Cooks in America reality check, which is returning for season 30 in 2026. Now, the current cast includes Lisa Barlow from the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, Downtown Julie Brown from MTV, I don't know, some show, Val Shermakovsky, we got Reza from Shaws of Sunset, Amara La Negra from Love and Hip Hop Miami, Ryan Lochte, the Olympic swimmer that everyone was swooning over back in the day, Manila Luzon from RuPaul's Drag Race, Romeo Miller from the early 2000s. Y'all remember Romeo? And then Beverly Mitchell from Seventh Heaven, and CT from the Traders and the Challenge. So that should be a good one to check out. I'm excited to see how they all do. Lisa Barlow doesn't cook, so it'll be interesting to see what she decides to throw together. Now, speaking of Lisa Barlow and the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, spilling some tea quickly about Mary Cosby. So we know that Mary Cosby has been in the news recently because of her son and because of her church. There's a new documentary out basically calling Mary Cosby a cult leader and calling her church and her covenant and everyone that works at the church as cult members and as it being a cult in itself. So that is so interesting. Also recently, Robert Cosby Jr., who is Mary's son on the show, who basically confessed about having all the substance use problems, pled guilty to multiple charges, including assault, trespassing, violating protective orders. Now, he is currently incarcerated, so he will remain in jail until February of 2026, following all these instances and the incidents that just happened with his wife, who is actually filing for divorce. So, a lot happening in Mary's neck of the woods, and a lot happening in the Salt Lake City world as well. We have a lot going down in regards to Meredith being in the crossfire from all the other ladies. Heather and Whitney have had it with her in terms of her going on crash outs and not taking accountability. But from the other side, Meredith is basically saying that the ladies are over-exaggerating things that happened between her and her exchange with Brittany Bateman on the plane. Lisa is having her back. Bronwyn is taking zero action and accountability of anything that's happening in terms of her stirring the pot. But it was interesting to also see her shut down the talk that Heather was about to bring to the table regarding Todd and his farting and kissing rumors and cheating. And Brahman doesn't want to talk about that. She quickly shut it down and said, throw the box away, Heather. So, Salt Lake City is becoming a little dry. I'm going to say that. It's becoming a little dry. The girlies are showing up to work every single episode, but I don't want to hear no more about Brittany and her drama with Meredith and Meredith crashing out on a plane and the lack of accountability. Let's get a new storyline. Let's ladies show up to work on something else. There's a lot that we need to ask questions about. How about Mary and her church? We need to ask about that. We need to have conversations about Angie K and how she showed up with Lisa Barlow. There's some unfinished business there between the two of them. And Brittany and Mary have a beef. I know Brahman and Brittany have a beef. And it's just really odd that the storyline that we're focusing on is something that happened off camera, which is not fair to viewers. I don't want to see that. I don't really care what happened off camera. I worked through it. We want to see you all patch things up, of course. But I would rather there be a storyline that we can consistently follow. So that's just my take on that. All right, moving on from Salt Lake City. I just finished watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives Season 3 reunion trailer, which dropped today on December 4th. And it was hosted by Stassi Schroeder from Vanderpump Rules. You remember Stassi, who had all that drama in Vanderpump Rules? We basically went through everything that these girls on this current show are going through. And it was super interesting. Everyone was there. Jen Affleck, Demi was there. Whitney Levitt was there. Michaela, Macy, Jesse, Taylor, Layla, and Miranda, as well as a lot of the guys showing up. So pretty much all the guys that were involved showed up, including Chase. We had a surprise guest visit from Dakota at the end and Taylor's parents, which was interesting. Spoiler alert. And the backstage shade at Dakota had me completely dying. It was just sending me through the roof. The ladies were just, their commentary was on point. Taylor was talking about how she was about to go out there and read Dakota his business, and it was really good to see the ladies come to communication on things that have happened during the season. But most importantly, it'll be interesting to see how this drama between Demi and Jen pans out, because I don't think there's anything resolved there. I am confused a lot. There's a lot of cliffhangers at the end. I think there's a lot of unanswered questions amongst Brett and Demi. I like seeing Brett stick up for Demi, but I'm also a little bit confused because Demi, a lot of this victimization that you're doing of yourself was things that you kind of started on your own and perpetuated, and you can't put on this facade and then want to be this certain person and then come into the fold and then expect everybody to just fold back to your liking. I don't think that's how things work. If you're gonna show up and work and you're gonna be absolutely like awful to some of the women, you got to take ownership of that, you know. And I think Jen played it cool by not going tit for tat for her too much. I can tell it was probably a waste of the producer's time and the host. So moving right along through that, I will say I like the fact that the ladies are talking about trauma, you know, and sexual trauma and what that does, because I think that's super important to touch on. But most importantly, especially in areas like Utah where, you know, some churches even shy away from conversations around mental health. And I think it's time to start having those conversations. And it is time for people to start reporting incidents of abuse when they hear about them too, and not looking the other way. Minus the victims. Obviously, it takes a victim a long time to come out and say anything because they're the person being abused. But anyone who suspects abuse or anything like that, or if you know of a friend or anything, please stand up for them and report it. Like, none of these people had to go through any of this. And unfortunately, that was the card they were dealt. And luckily, they have the support from each other. But can you imagine if they didn't have that support? That's what being a friend is, supporting your friends and having a space where you can talk about trauma. Okay, to wrap things up on Mormon Wives Reunion, I do like the fact that Chase showed up. I thought it was really, really, really weird that he was sitting right behind Taylor. It was kind of cringe knowing that Miranda was there, and a little disrespectful because you're her baby dad. And yeah, you're all single. You can do whatever you want. But girl, Miranda should have known that y'all were dating. Period. Or she should have known it was a date. I think Layla dating Chase's brother is to each his own. You know, she had a dip in the pond on both the brothers, whatever. But it'll be interesting to see how that story falls into place, because I know she's in the mix with Chase and Miranda's in the mix with Chase. Now Taylor's in the mix with Chase. And is there no one else in Utah? Is there anyone else in Salt Lake City? Is there anybody else in this area where they live? Anybody. Because these guys, seemingly, Dakota and Chase are... Never mind. I'm not going to say too much. Actually, no. I think they're using the show for camera and clout. Versus the other guys who are already married before. I think the storyline's more natural for them. And these other guys are just showing up to do too much. But anyway, I am going to stay in tune with the Mormon Wives because Taylor is going to be on The Bachelorette. And I don't watch The Bachelor Nation, any of those shows. Bachelor Paradise, The Bachelor, Golden Bachelor. I don't watch any of those shows. But I'm going to check this one out because I want to follow Taylor's story. Because I know this is going to bleed over into season 4. So I will be bringing you updates the more I learn about it. Okay, so that was my take on the Mormon Wives. Another update in the reality TV world is that Katie Janela from the Real Housewives of Orange County isn't returning for season 20. That's right. She feels that it was a toxic work environment, and she also felt that she was iced out by her castmates after season 19's drama, including conflicts with Shannon Bedore, Gretchen, and a few other ladies like Emily. So reports suggest that she was fired or let go upon Vicky's return, and they wanted to go in a different direction. But it's very telling because Katie did release a statement saying that she was leaving. But I guess, you know, my subconscious, saying Gina, maybe, you know, I'm not even going to touch that. I think next season, you know, Vicky is going to be there. Tamara will be there. Hopefully Shannon. I don't want Gretchen on the show. If Gretchen is a homophobe, don't give a homophobe a platform. I don't understand what is wrong with this country nowadays. We shouldn't be giving homophobia or bigotry any kind of platform whatsoever. I don't care if you're MAGA. There's people who are MAGA who aren't homophobic. Stop giving these people platforms. There's nothing normal about being transphobic or homophobic. So get rid of Gretchen. Anyway, that's just my take on that. Now, another thing in the line coming up soon is going to be the House of Villains. So, the House of Villains is going to still be hosted by Joel McHale, And the cast currently includes Tiffany Pollard from Flavor of Love. You know me, I love me some New York. Richard Hatch from Survivor. So, this is like an old list. So, I'm going to pull up the current season. And while I'm pulling up the current season, I think I want to talk about RuPaul's Drag Race. So, They just released the Queens, the Meet the Queens, and I'm actually kind of excited for this season. It seems like a season where they're gonna give us more generations of drag rather than focusing on the younger generation. So I will be interested to see how this pans out. Meaning, I can relate to some of the age groups. Finally, I think last season was kind of. I love last season. I love the energy. I love the drama. I love the queens. But it was still giving, like, okay, so we're letting a new generation come into the fold, which is fine. But let's get some seasoned queens on there. And when I say seasoned, I mean people within my age group. Now, let's talk about it. So the cast of RuPaul's Drag Race for next season includes, and I'm just going to start from the top of the list, Athena Dion, Briar Blush, Sierra Mist, Darlene Mitchell, Dee Fuego, Discord Adams, Jane Don't, Juicy Love Dion, Kenya Pleaser, Mandy Mango, Mia Starr, Mikey Meeks, Nini Coco, and Vita Vontae's Star. And those are your season 18. Oh my gosh, we're on season 18 already. Those are your season 18 girls, and there's 14 queens competing. So I'm excited for Drag Race to come back. I think it's going to be a great season based on what I'm seeing so far. I'm really excited for queens like Kenya Pleaser, Athena Dion, and there's another queen that I saw that I was like, I want to know more about her. So we'll see. I'm excited. Jane Don't, a few other cool queens. I think it was Discord Adams and Sierra Mist had like a cool interest look as well, or promo look. So we'll get into that, and I'll be keeping you along the journey as we learn more about these queens. All right, so the current list for the House of Villains season 3 cast, now that I have it pulled up: Paul from Big Brother, Paul Abrahamian from Big Brother, Tyson Apostol from The Challenge, Kate Chastain from Below Deck and The Traitors, Jackie Christie from Basketball Wives, Drita from Mob Wives, Plain Jane from RuPaul's Drag Race, Johnny Middlebrooks from Love Island The Challenge, Ashley Mitchell from The Challenge, Tiffany New York Pollard is back, Christine Quinn from Selling Sunset, and Tom Sandoval. So that is your season 3 cast for the villains. So sorry about that whole scuffle throughout here trying to figure out who the cast is. But yeah, that's the new cast for next season. I'm excited to see what comes through for that. I also want to talk a little bit about the Real Housewives of Potomac. I'm just gonna tell you all who I think my cast should be, or who the cast should be for Potomac for next year. And it's a lot of unpopularity, but I'm just gonna give it to you because that's what I do. I think next season Stacey, hands down, should come back. I believe with Stacey coming back, disclaimer, I think I want 8 Housewives again. I think I want them to try 8 Housewives again, but do it in a way where it makes sense to the show, and don't just be putting Housewives on the show, just be putting Housewives on the show. I don't like that. So anyway, Stacey for sure. Candace. Yep, I want Candace to return. Wendy, Tia, Kierna, Giselle, Monique, and Karen. So that is my season 11 prediction. And I want friends of the show to be Robin, Charisse, Jassy. Keep Jassy as a friend. She's cool to be around. And then Cookie. Cookie can come back and meddle with the girls. Bye, Ashley and Angel. Bye, Ashley and Angel. I think Ashley has ran her course. She's been on their 10th season. We followed her journey. She has had her housewife growth and her storyline. But I think her chapter's done. Ashley's just there to stir the mess now. And be in Stacey's face. Ashley can go do something else. I don't have anything else to say about Ashley. I just think Ashley can go do something else with her life. I think Ashley can go and be great on Ashley's terms. I don't want to hear any more about Ashley's music or anything like that. I'm done. I'm done. Now, Miss Angel. The reason why I want Angel to kind of take a beat, I feel like she needs to marinate and really understand what being a housewife is. If you're going to read, you're going to read. if you're gonna come and be your friend's like bestie on a show, then be your friend's bestie on a show. But that doesn't make you a housewife. If you're gonna be a housewife, you need to stand firm in like the things you say, and it needs to make sense to the viewers because not the words you're using, babe. The words you're using are fine. I use big words too, but in regards to what you're saying that is happening to you from Wendy and just kind of your take on things, and it just doesn't seem very personable. And I want Angel to be relatable. She came in a season with her own mind. You saw the little tiff between her and Kay and like the chin check thing. I thought we were going somewhere with that in terms of like friends coming into the fold and then them having their own opinion and standing firm. But I just don't know who Angel is. I don't understand her beef with Giselle. I didn't understand her stink attitude at BravoCon that bled through the camera screen into my living room. It's just not giving what it needs to give. And, you know, maybe she can come back and give us something next season. But right now, it's going to be a no for me. So, I don't think I need to give any more explanation other than that. You know, I just feel like Angel's not bringing what I thought she would bring. I think, you know, if you ride for Kay, you ride for Kay. But at the end of the day, I feel like you have to be your own person and be your own housewife and make your own imprint on the show. And I think she's had plenty of opportunity to do that. I just think she's too busy trying to pick up problem with the other ladies instead of them getting to know her for her. I think slow your roll down a bit, breathe, get to know all the ladies, meet up with everyone, stop being condescending to the women, and accusing them of being condescending to you. I don't think that's how that works. So that's just my take. That's just how I feel about those two. All right, thank you all so much for listening to me clock the tea. I think next time on Potomac, we are gonna get in for quite a season because I know that Eddie and Wendy are going to have to answer to the fraud case. And also we get a release from jail from Karen. And she has a sit-down interview with Andy. So I'm excited to see her come out and hopefully be rehabilitated and talk about her struggles with addiction. So thank you all for listening to me Clock the Tea. This is your host, Mark Long. Welcome to Clock the Tea. This is your host, Mark Long. So I want to go ahead and do another update on my wellness journey and just talk about how things have been since I had bariatric surgery a year ago, and things have been a roller coaster for sure. I know I talked in the first episode of Clock the Tea about all the mishaps with surgery and having to go back and adjusting, and now it's been like a year and a half since the procedure, and I will say things have been going okay. I will say I'm super grateful and I'm super thrilled, and I am beyond completely just not flabbergasted. I would say completely in awe. I would say, and I'm flabbergasted every time I look in the mirror because I can't believe how far I've come. But I'm in awe because of just how things are looking health-wise in terms of my A1C and that kind of thing. The hiccup I had was I got a severe infection. This started in February of this year, which caused a lot of dizziness and caused me to be on a lot of medications throughout the year. On top of getting a severe infection that got into one of my hair follicles on my face. Can you believe that? And it spread through into my ear and into my nose, and I had basically an infection that completely spread all over and has continued to spread sporadically throughout the year. Finally, I'm on the mend, but that's just telling for part of my healing journey because I was only halfway healing from surgery, and then I had this infection that happened. On top of the infection, I had a seizure condition that we finally managed. But yeah, it's just been a lot, and I would say with that happening and with everything that's been going on regarding my infection and the seizures, I would say also healing from surgery. Thank goodness I had the procedure because I felt like I was healthy enough to start to realize that, you know, this is just a part of the journey, but also that, you know, there are positive things to look at. Like, for example, regaining energy, being able to move around more, improve mobility and stamina, right, compared to how I was feeling prior to surgery, and just this emotional resilience that I've developed, like having had to work through all the the health scares and everything kind of behind closed doors. A lot of people didn't really see me being hospitalized this summer. And yeah, just kind of battling with all the things that came along with it, with the medications that I was on. It had an impact on my functioning and my day to day, and just I thank goodness for therapy, because without therapy and digging into my mental health, I would not be as sane as I am. And I attribute that to, setting more boundaries while also prioritizing my physical health. I would say things are starting to look up in terms of my journey. I know that healing isn't linear. It's a remix of like different victories and setbacks. But most importantly, I would say I'm happy that I made the decision to continue through the process. And also that I have a lot more clarity on myself. I feel like I am beginning to understand that health is wealth, and that I had a food addiction. And I think part of coming to terms with addiction is to put it out there and to reclaim the narrative around the addiction and own the narrative that that was the case for me, and that I have developed better strategies to cope with my mental health and to cope with feelings of isolation or feeling of wanting to belong. And instead of coping with food, I've learned ways to come up with ways where I can stay engaged in life. I have a house full of pets, so I'm able to spend more time with them and be more active with them. I started this podcast because I wanted to talk more about my journey, but I also wanted to have the ability to be open and express myself and take people on this ride and tell people that it's okay to go on your health journey, and it's okay to be open. It's okay to bring people along. It's okay to share pictures of before and after, because only you as a person knows what that means. And just to put a button on this, I would say, along with the struggles of weight loss and the health stuff and the things that come with, post-op operative things, body image is a huge focal point. And I would say I started my body image journey, I would say, probably before I started the surgery, but I would say consistently making it a goal for me about, I would say, earlier this year, because it is a true thing that happens when you have weight loss surgery. But I think it's a true thing for anyone that experiences any kind of body changes. I think you have to be transparent about what you're going through and how you're coping. For me, how I've been able to get through it is by sharing my journey with everyone else and showing before and after pictures, and showing that I can see myself before and after, and knowing that I was unhappy and admitting to myself that I was unhappy, and knowing that I'm happy now, not necessarily because I lost hundreds of pounds, but because I'm mentally happy. I can see myself in a different light, because I think when you make decisions about your health, it's also about your stability and your mental awareness and who you have around you and the positivity that you allow into your corner. And I think that's super important too. But in other words, I would say if you or anyone you know is struggling with their weight or struggling with the decision to have weight loss surgery, please reach out to me. I am more than happy to talk about the process and a lot of the biological and psychological and physiological things I know, just because that's the neurodivergent in me. I got really nerdy about everything and the preparation for surgery. But most importantly, if you're looking for someone to talk to just about making that decision or what it looks like post-operatively, I wasn't expecting to get a sinus infection, and I wasn't expecting to have to battle with everything else, but I'm happy that I had a place on my podcast to talk about this, but most importantly that I have people in my life that I can share this journey with, that support me and love me when I was at my worst and when I'm at my my very best. And I love you all, and I appreciate you all, and thanks for tuning in, and I hope I can share more about this with you all as I go into the future. But yeah, it's been a journey. The medication changes along with weight has been quite the challenge, but I'm still here. Thanks for listening. So, in this segment, we're going to talk about Christmas traditions around the world. And we're also going to have a little bit of conversation because there's some of these I've never heard of. And, well, I think I never heard of most of these. So, but we'll get into it together. The first holiday tradition that AI helped me find is in Mexico. And it's called Posadas. And it's a reenactment of Mary and Joseph's search for shelter, ending with piñatas and feasts. I think that's really cool. I would celebrate that. Let's see if I can find out any more about that. So they're saying that this holiday tradition is very, very family friendly because a lot of people don't know that this also coincides with, Christmas, right? But it's typically like a early December to early January thing. Like it stretches that long. And is known for kids and adults to walk door to door, singing holiday traditions. Also, some pretend to turn them away until someone finally welcomes them in. It's kind of like a cool little quirky thing that they have going on. But some food and traditions for this would be obviously the piñatas shaped like stars representing the Star of Bethlehem, tamales wrapped in corn husks. On Christmas Eve, which is called Noche Buena, includes midnight mass and late night feasting, which is very traditional to this holiday tradition in Mexico. So that's really cool. Makes me want to go to Mexico just for what I'm hearing right now. Okay, so another place is Iceland. They celebrate the 13 Yule Lads. So basically, long story short, mischievous figures visit children nightly to give them gifts or potatoes depending on their behavior. So this tradition has been around for some time, and they celebrate this pretty vehemently, I would say. And I would venture to say, a lot of these holiday traditions kind of are different depending on where you live, and some of them are very similar depending on where you live. Another holiday tradition would be in the Philippines. Hopefully I pronounced this right, but it's Simbang Gabi and Giant Lantern Festival. Now let's dive into that. So there's 9 days leading up to this, and it's actually really, really, really interesting. So let me go ahead and find more information for us. So it basically spans the entire bird months, so September, October, November, and December. And it starts around September 1st, and typically is celebrated through Christmas Eve, and they call their Christmas Eve celebration Noche Buena as well. If you're noticing, some of those Latin words are very similar. But yeah, they usually head into midnight mass just like any other traditional thing. They have decorations all festive year or all this time with stars to kind of help celebrate or represent the lanterns. So that's actually really cool. The Philippines has their own traditions, and I love that for them. In Spain, they celebrate something called Cagatillo, which literally translates to pooping log. Yeah, just kind of wrap your mind around that. So a wooden log is fed to children, right? And then the log is typically beaten to release candy, kind of like a piñata. Italy has La Befana, and it's a kind of tradition that celebrates gifts to children, symbolizing generosity, which is very cool. Germany does the Advent calendars. I know you've all seen those, and it kind of became a huge tradition here in the United States in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And a lot of people still celebrate Advent calendars here. With the... Basically, Advent calendars here in the U.S. anyhow are calendars where it marks the days left till Christmas, but every day of the calendar, so 25 days, you open the Advent or you kind of change the number or whatever, the countdown, if you will, and it uncovers some kind of special gift. And in Germany, they have very elaborate calendars and festive with a lot of festive markets to celebrate and sell a lot of mulled wine and gingerbread. So it's kind of very similar to something we see here in the U.S. Another holiday tradition in Ethiopia is Jena, which is celebrated by fasting and with church services and traditional games to the culture. And typically that's celebrated around January 7th. In Japan, catch this, They celebrate Christmas by having KFC chicken. That's just like a thing that they have. And this was a marked tradition to start it in the 1970s. And there's not really a lot around it other than there's a bunch of marketing at the time from KFC to sell chicken, right? And to be a little bit more international with it. And they landed in Japan and it was a hit. And every year there is a Kentucky since I would say like around 1974, Kentucky for Christmas was the marketing campaign back then, and it just really hit in Tokyo, and it's been a tradition ever since in Japan, and I think that's pretty cool. It's interesting to see like what starts the tradition and what keeps it going. In the Ukraine, spiderweb decorations typically celebrate Christmas, which is so interesting because spiderwebs are associated with Halloween here. But in the Ukraine, it symbolizes luck and prosperity. And a lot of trees, you will see a lot of trees with web on them as well. In Poland, they celebrate Wigilia dinner, which is a Christmas Eve fest, with 12 meatless dishes symbolizing the apostles. In Australia, they celebrate something called beach celebrations, which is basically what it is. You have a lot of barbecues on the beach and a lot of surfing events for Santa. So it's a lot of different than here because Christmas there is a summer tradition. So you get a little bit more summer influences in Australia than you do here. In Sweden, they call it St. Lucia's Day, or a holiday tradition would be St. Lucia's Day, which is December 13th, where girls wear white dresses and candle crowns honoring the Saint of Light. In Finland, visiting ancestors' graves is very common this time of the year because basically they're giving a lot of celebration to those who have come before, but it's also marked as a day for creating glowing landscapes of remembrance for ancestors that have passed away. And last but not least, in the United States, a weird, quirky tradition, or a tradition that a lot of people know about, is Yule log broadcast, which is originated in New York in 1966. TV stations airing a burning log for cozy ambience. And this typically happens every year in the United States, along with our traditional Christmas, Hallmark holiday, and all the things that come with that in terms of Santa Claus and the gifts that are being given and all that kind of thing. So I hope you all enjoyed listening to some holiday traditions. I'm here to talk about more of that, and next week we'll get into some more holiday stuff. Thanks for tuning in.